He abandoned his wife, but 3 months later, he received the worst punishment. The Cole family's backyard was buzzing with laughter and chatter as friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate Jack and Sarah's 20th wedding anniversary. Twinkling lights hung from trees, and the aroma of grilled steaks filled the air. Sarah, radiant in a blue dress, moved among the guests, her smile never faltering. Their children, Emily and Ryan, helped serve drinks, looking every bit the picture-perfect family. Jack Cole, successful businessman and pillar of the Oakville community, stood near the grill, nursing a glass of whiskey. His eyes darted nervously around the party, lingering on a young woman standing off to the side, Lauren, his assistant. As the evening wore on, Jack clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. The crowd hushed, anticipating a heartfelt speech about love and commitment. Sarah beamed at her husband, her eyes filled with adoration. "Friends, family," Jack began, his voice wavering slightly. "Thank you all for being here tonight. These past 20 years have been quite a journey." Sarah's smile faltered as she noticed Jack's hesitation. "But tonight, I have an announcement to make," he continued. The atmosphere shifted, tension creeping in. I'm leaving Sarah. I'm in love with someone else." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's face drained of color, her wine glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the patio. "Jack?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What are you saying?" Emily, their 16-year-old daughter, pushed through the stunned guests. "Dad, what the hell?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Ryan, 14, stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. When he tried to speak, only a stutter came out. "Dad?" Lauren stepped forward, her face a mix of guilt and defiance. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Jack and I are in love." The backyard erupted into chaos. Guests murmured in shock, some hurrying to comfort Sarah, others glaring at Jack with disgust. "How long?" Sarah demanded, her voice rising hysterically. "How long have you been lying to me?" Jack looked at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. "A year," he admitted quietly. Emily lunged at her father, pounding his chest with her fists. "You bastard," she screamed. "How could you do this to us?" Ryan's stutter worsened as he tried to process what was happening. Mom?" he called out, looking lost and scared. Sarah staggered back, her face ashen. "A year?" she repeated, her voice hollow. "Our whole life? It's been a lie?" Jack reached out to steady her, but she recoiled from his touch. "Don't you dare touch me," she hissed. The party dissolved into a nightmare. Neighbors whispered among themselves, shock giving way to gossip. Jack's business partners exchanged worried glances, already calculating the fallout. As Sarah's best friend tried to guide her inside, Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed in the middle of the patio, sobs racking her body. Emily dropped to her knees beside her mother, glaring at Jack with a hatred that made him step back. "Get out," Emily spat. "Just get out and never come back." Jack looked around at the scene of devastation he'd created, his weeping wife, his furious daughter, his shell-shocked son. For a moment, doubt flickered across his face. But then Lauren slipped her hand into his, and his resolve hardened. "I'm sorry," he said, though the words rang hollow. "I never meant for it to happen like this." As Jack and Lauren walked away, leaving the ruins of the Cole family behind, the weight of what he'd done began to settle on Jack's shoulders. He detonated a bomb in the middle of their lives, and the fallout was only beginning. The American dream of a perfect family lay shattered on the patio, along with the broken wine glass, and nothing would ever be the same again. The day after the disastrous anniversary party, Sarah Cole woke up in a hospital bed. The stark white walls and antiseptic smell were a jarring contrast to the festive backyard of just hours ago. A doctor stood at the foot of her bed, explaining that she'd been admitted for acute stress. "Mrs. Cole, your body has undergone severe shock," the doctor said gently. "We need to keep you here for observation." Sarah nodded numbly, her mind replaying Jack's words over and over. The weight of his betrayal crushed her chest, making it hard to breathe. As the doctor left, Sarah curled up on her side, silent tears soaking her pillow. Across town, Emily Cole stumbled through the school hallways, her eyes bloodshot and unfocused. The whispers and stares of her classmates followed her like a cloud. In the bathroom, she pulled a flask from her backpack, taking a long swig. The burn of alcohol dulled the pain, if only for a moment. Her phone buzzed with another message from her dad. She deleted it without reading, her finger hovering over his contact. With a surge of anger, she blocked his number. Meanwhile, Ryan sat on the floor of his bedroom, rocking back and forth. His breath came in short gasps as panic gripped him. "Dad," he stuttered over and over. When his alarm went off for school, he buried his head in his knees, unable to face the world. In a sleek downtown apartment, Jack woke up next to Lauren. For a moment, he felt a surge of excitement at his new freedom. He pulled out his phone, snapping a selfie of them in bed. "First morning of the rest of our lives," he captioned it, posting it to his social media. Lauren grinned, snuggling closer. "We should go out for breakfast," she suggested. "Show the world how happy we are." As they walked hand in hand to a trendy cafe, Jack's phone buzzed with notifications. Friends and family expressing shock, disappointment, and anger. He silenced it, pushing down the first twinge of doubt. Back at the hospital, Sarah stared blankly at the ceiling. The nurse had just left after checking her vitals, concern etched on her face. Sarah's mind wandered to dark places, wondering if her family would be better off without her. The thought of facing life alone, of rebuilding from nothing, seemed impossible. At school, the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. "Emily Cole, please report to the office immediately." Emily swayed as she stood up, the alcohol making the room spin. She stumbled down the hallway, ignoring the snickers of her classmates. In the office, she found the principal and a police officer waiting. "Emily, we received reports of you drinking on school grounds," the principal said sternly. "We're going to have to search your locker and backpack." Emily's heart raced as they found the flask. The officer began reading her rights, but his words faded into background noise as reality hit her. She was in serious trouble, and the one person she'd always turn to in a crisis was gone. Ryan's bedroom door creaked open, his mother's friend peeking in. "Ryan, honey, it's time for school." Ryan shook his head violently, his stutter worse than ever. "No school," he managed. "See, can't you go?" The friend sighed, unsure how to handle the situation. She pulled out her phone to call Sarah, then remembered she was in the hospital. The Cole family was falling apart, and no one knew how to put it back together. As Jack and Lauren posed for another selfie at the cafe, his phone lit up with a message from the family lawyer. The divorce papers were ready. Jack's smile faltered for a moment as he remembered Sarah's face crumpling at the party. He pushed the image away, focusing on Lauren's bright smile. But as the day wore on, cracks began to show in Jack's new life. Lauren's constant need for reassurance grated on him. The disapproving looks from acquaintances made him uncomfortable. By evening, doubt had taken root, though he refused to acknowledge it. Late that night, Emily sat on the bathroom floor, staring in shock at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines glared back at her, confirming her worst fear. Panic rose in her throat as she realized the full impact of her reckless behavior. With shaking hands, she picked up her phone. She had blocked her dad's number in anger, but now she needed him more than ever. Swallowing her pride, she unblocked the number and hit call. As the phone rang, Emily's mind raced. How could she tell her father, who had just blown up their family, that she was now pregnant? But she had no one else to turn to in this moment of desperation. "Dad?" she whispered when Jack answered, her voice breaking. "I need help." News of the Cole family drama spread through Oakville like wildfire. At the local diner, at church gatherings, and over backyard fences, the story of Jack's betrayal was on everyone's lips. Sarah returned home from the hospital to find her front yard filled with neighbors. They held candles and signs reading, "We support Sarah" and "Stay strong, Cole family." The sight brought tears to her eyes. "We're here for you, Sarah," her next-door neighbor said, hugging her tightly. Sarah felt a mix of gratitude and shame. "Thank you," she whispered, quickly retreating inside. At Oakville High, Emily walked through a gauntlet of whispers and stares. In the cafeteria, a group of girls approached her table. How does it feel to be the daughter of the town cheater? One sneered. Emily kept her head down, but her silence didn't deter them. One girl snatched Emily's backpack, dumping its contents on the floor. As Emily scrambled to collect her things, someone started recording. "Look at the slut, just like her dad," a voice taunted. The video spread rapidly on social media, adding to Emily's humiliation. She stopped going to the cafeteria, hiding in bathroom stalls during lunch. Ryan sat in the school counselor's office, staring at the floor. The counselor's gentle questions were met with silence. "Ryan, your teachers are worried. You haven't spoken in class for weeks," she said. Ryan's only response was to pull his knees to his chest, retreating further into himself. Later that day, Sarah received a call from the counselor. "Mrs. Cole, I'm recommending Ryan see a psychiatrist. I'm concerned he may be suffering from severe depression." Sarah agreed, her heart heavy with worry for her son. Across town, Jack sat in his office staring at his computer screen. Another email from a longtime client terminating their contract. It was the third this week. "We value our family-friendly image," the email read, "and we can no longer associate with someone of your character." Jack ran his hands through his hair, frustration building. He hadn't anticipated how his personal choices would impact his business. That evening, Jack met his best friend Tom for drinks. The bar fell silent as he entered, hostile glares following him to his seat. "It's bad, isn't it?" Jack asked Tom. Tom nodded grimly. "Jack, there's something you need to know. Sarah, she tried to hurt herself last night." Jack's face drained of color. "What? Is she okay?" "She's alive," Tom said. "But she's not okay, Jack. None of them are." For the first time since leaving, real regret began to seep into Jack's conscience. At home, Sarah sat on Emily's bed, holding her daughter as she sobbed. "I can't go back there, Mom," Emily cried. "Everyone hates me." Sarah stroked her hair, feeling helpless. "We'll figure something out, sweetie, I promise." In his room, Ryan sat in the dark, his laptop open to a social media page filled with hateful comments about his family. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, wanting to defend them, but no words came out. The next morning, Jack woke to a flurry of notifications on his phone. The video of Emily being bullied had made its way to him. His stomach churned as he watched his daughter being humiliated. Before he could process it, another notification popped up. An email from Sarah's lawyer. Jack's hands shook as he opened it. "Mr. Cole, this email serves as official notification of divorce proceedings initiated by Sarah Cole. Additionally, Mrs. Cole is seeking full custody of Emily and Ryan." Jack sat on the edge of the bed, the full weight of his actions finally hitting him. He had torn apart not just his marriage, but his children's lives as well. Lauren stirred beside him. "Everything okay, babe?" Jack couldn't bring himself to answer. The life he thought he wanted was crumbling around him, and he was powerless to stop it. As he stared at the divorce notification, Jack realized that his impulsive decision had set off a chain reaction he never could have anticipated. The small town he once called home had turned its back on him. His children were suffering, and Sarah... Jack shuddered, thinking of how close he'd come to losing her forever. For the first time since that fateful party, Jack allowed himself to wonder. Had he made a terrible mistake? Jack sat in his office, surrounded by empty boxes. The company he'd built from the ground up was slipping through his fingers. His secretary knocked softly, entering with another stack of papers. "More contract terminations, Mr. Cole," she said, avoiding his eyes. Jack nodded, his shoulders slumping. The backlash from his personal choices had spiraled out of control, and his business was paying the price. Across town, Sarah sat in her therapist's office, twisting a tissue in her hands. "I have to be strong for my children," she said, her voice shaking. "But some days I can barely get out of bed." The therapist nodded sympathetically. "We'll work on coping strategies, Sarah, and I'm prescribing an antidepressant to help stabilize your mood." Sarah left with a prescription and a glimmer of hope. She had to heal, for Emily and Ryan's sake. Meanwhile, Emily slipped out of a nondescript clinic, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The decision to end her pregnancy had been agonizing, but she couldn't bear the thought of bringing a child into her chaotic life. As she walked home, the weight of her secret pressed down on her. The emptiness inside wasn't just physical, it was consuming her entire being. At home, Ryan sat in his room, a razor blade clutched in his trembling hand. The pain of his father's abandonment, the bullying at school, it was all too much. As he pressed the blade to his skin, his bedroom door burst open. "Ryan, no!" Sarah screamed, rushing to her son. Hours later, Sarah paced the halls of the psychiatric ward where Ryan had been admitted. The doctor's words echoed in her head. Severe depression, suicidal ideation, needs close monitoring. Across town, Jack returned to the apartment he shared with Lauren. The excitement of their new life had faded, replaced by a growing unease. "Where have you been?" Lauren demanded as he walked in. "I've been calling all day." Jack sighed, dropping his keys on the table. "I lost the company, Lauren. It's over." Lauren's eyes widened. "What? How could you let this happen?" As they argued, Jack felt the walls closing in. The freedom he'd sought by leaving his family now felt like a prison of his own making. That night, as Lauren slept, Jack sat on the balcony, his head in his hands. The weight of his choices crushed him. He thought of Sarah, facing their children's struggles alone. He thought of Emily, her bright future now clouded by his selfish actions. And Ryan, his sensitive son, now in a hospital bed because of him. For the first time, Jack allowed himself to cry. The magnitude of what he'd done finally hitting him. The next morning, Lauren cornered Jack in the kitchen. "We need to talk," she said, her tone serious. Jack braced himself, expecting more complaints about their dwindling finances. "I'm pregnant," Lauren announced. Jack froze, the coffee mug slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. "Aren't you happy?" Lauren asked, her eyes narrowing. I don't know what to say," Jack stammered. Lauren's expression hardened. "Well, I know what you need to do. Cut all ties with your family. I won't have my child competing with your past." Jack stared at her, shocked by the ultimatum. "Lauren, they're my children. I can't just..." "Choose, Jack," Lauren interrupted. "Me and our baby, or them. You can't have both." Before Jack could respond, his phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. "Mr. Cole?" A nurse's voice came through. "You need to come to the hospital immediately. It's about your son, Ryan." Jack's heart raced as he grabbed his keys. "I have to go," he told Lauren. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back," Lauren threatened. Jack paused for a moment, torn between his old life and the new one he'd chosen. Then, without a word, he left, Lauren's angry shouts following him down the hallway. As he sped to the hospital, Jack's mind whirled. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? The life he'd imagined with Lauren was crumbling, while his real family was in pieces because of him. He parked haphazardly at the hospital, rushing to the information desk. "Ryan Cole," he panted. "I'm his father." The nurse's cold stare reminded Jack that everyone in town knew his story. "Room 302, she said curtly. Jack ran to the elevator, his heart pounding. What had happened to Ryan? And would his son even want to see him after everything? As the elevator doors opened on the third floor, Jack steeled himself for whatever awaited him. He had made a mess of everything, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to make things right. Sarah Cole gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The news of Lauren's pregnancy echoed in her mind, each word a knife twisting in her heart. Tears blurred her vision as she sped down the darkened road. Suddenly, headlights flashed in her rearview mirror. Sarah swerved, trying to regain control. The car spun, tires screeching. Then, darkness. Miles away, Jack's phone rang. A police officer's voice cut through the night. "Mr. Cole, there's been an accident. Your wife, Sarah..." Jack's world stopped. "Is she?" "She's alive, but it's critical. You need to come to Oakville General immediately." Jack raced to the hospital, his mind a whirlwind of guilt and fear. As he burst through the emergency room doors, he was met with cold stares and whispers. "Mr. Cole?" A doctor approached, his face grim. "Your wife is in a coma. The next 24 hours are crucial." Jack stumbled to a chair, the weight of his actions crushing him. What had he done? Emily arrived at the hospital, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw Jack, her face contorted with rage. You, she screamed, lunging at him. This is all your fault. Security guards held her back as she continued to shout. Mom found out about Lauren's pregnancy. She was upset. That's why she crashed. Jack's face paled. Emily, I'm so sorry. I never meant. Save it, Emily spat. You want to know something? I was pregnant too, but I got rid of it because our family is such a mess thanks to you. Jack staggered back, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. His daughter had been through so much alone. In Ryan's hospital room, a nurse tried to calm the agitated boy. Your father's here, Ryan. He wants to see you. Ryan's eyes widened in panic. No, he stuttered. I won't see him. He scrambled out of bed, trying to escape. The nurse called for help as Ryan's panic attack escalated. Jack stood outside Ryan's room, listening to the commotion. His son's distress was a knife in his heart. He'd caused this, all of it. Hours passed in a haze of coffee and hushed conversations. Jack sat by Sarah's bedside, holding her lifeless hand. I'm so sorry, Sarah, he whispered. Please wake up. The kids need you. I need you. The doctor entered, his face somber. Mr. Cole, we need to discuss your wife's condition. Jack braced himself for the worst. The trauma to her brain was severe, the doctor explained. There's a possibility she may never wake up. Jack's world crumbled. The thought of Sarah, vibrant and full of life, lying in this bed forever, it was unbearable. Emily stood in the doorway, overhearing everything. Her eyes met Jack's, filled with a mix of hatred and despair. Are you happy now? She asked, her voice breaking. You've destroyed everything. Before Jack could respond, commotion erupted in the hallway. Lauren's voice carried through the hospital corridors. Where is he? Jack! Jack Cole! Jack rushed out, finding Lauren at the nurse's station. What are you doing here? He hissed. Lauren's eyes flashed with anger. What am I doing here? What are you doing here? You said you were done with them. Patients and staff stared as Lauren's voice rose. You need to choose, Jack. Right now, me and our baby, or them. Jack looked around, seeing the judgmental stares, the pain in Emily's eyes, the fear on Ryan's face as he peeked out from his room. Lauren, please, Jack pleaded. This isn't the time or place. No, Lauren shouted. I'm tired of coming second to your guilt. Choose. The hallway fell silent, all eyes on Jack. In that moment, the full weight of his choices crashed down on him. He'd torn his family apart, hurt the people he loved most, all for a relationship built on impulse and selfishness. Jack looked at Lauren, then at the door to Sarah's room. His wife lay fighting for her life because of him. His children were broken because of him. I'm sorry, Lauren, Jack said quietly. But I can't abandon my family again. They need me. Lauren's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, Jack Cole. I'll make sure of it. As she stormed out, Jack turned to face his children. Emily's glare was icy, while Ryan shrunk back into his room. Jack knew he had a long road ahead. Earning forgiveness, if it was even possible, would take time. But as he looked at Sarah through the window, he knew he had to try. The night stretched on, the darkest Jack had ever known. But as he sat vigil by Sarah's bedside, a small flame of hope flickered in his heart. He'd made the right choice, finally. Now, he just prayed it wasn't too late. Jack left the hospital, his mind reeling from the events of the past few days. As he walked to his car, a group of men approached him. Hey, Cole, one shouted. You've got some nerve showing your face around here. Before Jack could respond, a fist connected with his jaw. He stumbled back, tasting blood. This is for Sarah. Another man growled, landing a punch to Jack's stomach. The group descended on him, fists and feet flying. Jack didn't fight back. Part of him felt he deserved this. When they finally left, Jack lay on the ground, bruised and bleeding. He'd hit rock bottom, and he knew it. Inside the hospital, Emily sat on her bed, staring at the wall. The doctors had pumped her stomach after she'd swallowed a handful of antidepressants. A nurse entered, checking Emily's vitals. How are you feeling? Emily turned, her eyes hollow. I just want it all to stop, she whispered. For the first time since her father left, Emily's tough exterior cracked. Tears streamed down her face as she sobbed. I need help. Please, I can't do this anymore. The nurse hugged her, promising to get her the help she needed. In Ryan's room, a therapist sat across from the boy. Ryan, can you tell me how you're feeling? Ryan, who hadn't spoken in weeks, suddenly looked up. His voice was barely audible, but his words were clear. I hate him. I hate my dad. The therapist leaned forward. Can you tell me more about that? Ryan's words came out in a rush. He left us. He broke Mom. He ruined everything. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. As Ryan's shouts echoed down the hall, Jack limped back into the hospital. A nurse gasped at his appearance, insisting he get checked out. While waiting for a doctor, Jack's phone rang. It was Lauren. Jack, I need you to come home now. Her voice was frantic. Lauren, I can't. My family needs me, Jack replied. If you don't come back, I'll get rid of this baby, Lauren threatened. I swear I will. Jack felt sick. Lauren, please, don't do anything rash. We can talk about this. No more talking, Lauren snapped. It's me or them. Choose now. The line went dead, leaving Jack in a state of panic. He couldn't leave his family, but he couldn't let Lauren hurt their child either. As Jack grappled with this impossible choice, a doctor approached him. Mr. Cole, we need to discuss your wife's condition, the doctor said. Jack braced himself for more bad news. We've run some tests, the doctor continued. And, well, there's no easy way to say this. Your wife was never pregnant. Jack stared at the doctor, uncomprehending. What? The hormone levels in her blood work. There's no indication of pregnancy. It seems Miss Parker was mistaken. Or she lied, Jack finished, the truth dawning on him. Anger and relief washed over him in equal measure. Lauren had manipulated him, used a fake pregnancy to try and control him. But now, he was free to focus entirely on his family. As Jack processed this revelation, a nurse burst into the room. Mr. Cole, it's your wife, Sarah. She's showing signs of consciousness. Jack raced to Sarah's room, his heart pounding. Emily and Ryan were already there, watching their mother intently. Sarah's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttering. Sarah? Jack called softly, taking her hand. Sarah, can you hear me? For a moment the room was silent. Then slowly Sarah's eyes opened. She blinked, confused, her gaze moving from Jack to her children. What happened? She croaked, her voice weak from disuse. Emily and Ryan rushed to her side, tears streaming down their faces. Jack stood back, overwhelmed with relief and guilt. As he watched his family reunite, Jack knew this was a turning point. Sarah was awake. Lauren's lie was exposed, and he had a chance, however small, to make things right. But the road ahead would not be easy. Emily still couldn't look at him without hatred in her eyes. Ryan's words of loathing echoed in his mind. And Sarah? Jack couldn't begin to imagine the conversation they would have to have. Still, for the first time in months, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. He had hit rock bottom, faced the consequences of his actions, and come out the other side. Now, he had to prove to his family that he was truly committed to rebuilding what he had destroyed. As Sarah's doctor entered the room to check on her, Jack stepped into the hallway. He had calls to make, to his lawyer, to deal with Lauren's lies, and to a therapist. He needed help to become the man his family deserved. Jack took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. The hardest part of his journey was just beginning, but he was ready to face it head-on. For his family, for Sarah, for Emily and Ryan, he would do whatever it took to earn back their trust and love. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the harsh hospital lights. Her family surrounded her bed, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. Mom, Emily whispered, grasping Sarah's hand. Sarah's voice was weak, but clear. What happened? The doctor explained her accident and coma, while Sarah listened in stunned silence. As the reality of her situation sank in, her gaze landed on Jack. You, she said, her voice hardening. What are you doing here? Jack stepped forward, his face etched with remorse. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Get out, Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking with anger. I don't want you here. Emily and Ryan watched as their father left the room, shoulders slumped. The family reunion was far from the joyous occasion they had hoped for. Over the next few days, Sarah's strength returned, along with her memories. One afternoon she asked to speak to Jack alone. As he entered her room, Sarah's eyes blazed with fury. How could you? She demanded. How could you destroy our family like this? Jack tried to explain, to apologize, but Sarah's anger was a force of nature. I trusted you, she spat. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away for what? A fling with your assistant? Jack absorbed her words, knowing he deserved every bit of her rage. When Sarah's tirade ended, she was breathless, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Jack said softly. I know it's not enough, but I am truly, deeply sorry. Sarah turned away, her body shaking with sobs. Jack wanted to comfort her, but knew he had lost that right. Outside Sarah's room, Jack found Emily sitting alone. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture defeated. Emily? Jack approached cautiously. Are you okay? Emily looked up, her face a mask of pain. No, Dad, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. Jack sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Do you want to talk about it? Emily was quiet for a moment, then the words tumbled out. I tried to kill myself, she confessed. The night before Mom's accident, I took a bunch of pills, but I got scared and called 911. Jack felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Oh, Emily, he breathed. I had no idea. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. Emily's shoulders shook as she cried. For the first time since Jack left, she didn't push him away when he hugged her. Meanwhile, Ryan sat in his therapist's office, his parents and Emily beside him. The therapist had suggested family therapy, and to everyone's surprise, Ryan had agreed. Ryan, the therapist began, can you tell your father how you feel? Ryan stared at the floor, his hands clenched in his lap. I'm angry, he said quietly, and sad, and scared. Jack leaned forward. I'm listening, Ryan. I want to understand. Ryan's voice grew stronger. You left us. You broke our family. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. The words stung, but Jack nodded. I understand. I'm going to work every day to earn back your trust, even if it takes years. As the session ended, Ryan didn't smile at Jack, but he didn't flinch away either. It was a tiny step, but a step nonetheless. Later that evening, Jack visited Sarah again. Her anger had subsided, replaced by a deep sadness. Jack, she said softly, I need to tell you something. Jack braced himself for more recriminations, but Sarah's next words caught him off guard. I still love you, she admitted. After everything, some part of me still loves you. But I can't forgive you. Not now, maybe not ever. Jack nodded, understanding the complexity of her feelings. I love you too, Sarah. I never stopped. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right, whether you can forgive me or not. As Jack left the hospital that night, he felt a glimmer of hope. His family was broken, but not beyond repair. He had a long road ahead, but he was committed to the journey. Just as Jack reached his car, his phone buzzed. It was an email from his lawyer. Jack's heart sank as he read the message. Lauren was suing him for assault, claiming he had pushed her during their last argument. Jack leaned against his car, the weight of his past mistakes crashing down on him once again. Just when he thought he could focus on rebuilding his family, his old life was threatening to derail everything. He looked back at the hospital, thinking of Sarah and the kids. He couldn't let Lauren's lies destroy the fragile progress he'd made. With renewed determination, Jack called his lawyer. He would fight this false accusation and prove to his family that he was truly committed to change. As he drove home, Jack realized that the light at the end of the tunnel was still distant, but it was there, and he would do whatever it took to reach it, for his family's sake and his own. Jack straightened his tie, taking a deep breath before entering the courtroom. Lauren's accusation of assault had led to this moment, and he knew the outcome could change everything. As the trial began, Jack listened to Lauren's tearful testimony, describing a push that never happened. His lawyer cross-examined her, pointing out inconsistencies in her story, but Lauren stuck to her tale. When Jack took the stand, he spoke quietly but firmly. I never touched Lauren. We argued, yes, but I would never resort to violence. The prosecutor grilled Jack about his past, bringing up his affair and abandonment of his family. Jack didn't shy away from his mistakes. I've made terrible choices, he admitted, but I'm not violent. I'm trying to make amends. Just as the trial seemed to be swinging in Lauren's favor, there was a commotion at the back of the courtroom. Sarah walked in, her face set with determination. Your Honor, Sarah said, approaching the bench, I'd like to speak on Jack's behalf. The judge, surprised, allowed it. Sarah took the stand, her eyes meeting Jack's for a moment. "I know Jack better than anyone," Sarah began. "He's hurt me deeply, but he's not violent. Never, in all our years together, did he ever raise a hand to me or our children." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Lauren's face paled as Sarah continued, describing Jack's gentle nature even in their worst arguments. After Sarah's testimony, the tide turned. The jury found Jack not guilty, and Lauren fled the courtroom in tears. Outside, Jack approached Sarah cautiously. "Thank you," he said. "You didn't have to do that." Sarah's eyes were conflicted. "I did it for the truth, not for you," she replied, walking away. Weeks passed, and Jack continued his efforts to rebuild trust with his family. One evening, he received a panicked call from Emily. "Dad," she sobbed, "I can't do this. I want to hurt myself again." Jack rushed to Emily's side, finding her curled up on her bedroom floor. He sat with her, talking her through the crisis, reminding her of her strength. "I'm here, Emily," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll get through this together." As the night wore on, Emily's sobs subsided. She looked at her father, really looked at him, for the first time in months. "Thanks, Dad," she whispered. The next day, Jack received another unexpected call, this time from Ryan's school. Ryan had gotten into a fight defending Jack against some bullies. Jack found Ryan in the principal's office, knuckles bruised and lips split. "They were saying awful things about you," Ryan explained. "I couldn't just stand there." Jack felt a mix of pride and concern. "I appreciate you standing up for me, Ryan. But violence isn't the answer. We need to find better ways to deal with this." Ryan nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. It was the first time he'd looked at Jack without anger in months. As the weeks turned to months, Jack's relationship with his children slowly improved. He attended every therapy session, every school event, proving his commitment day by day. Sarah watched this transformation with a mix of hope and wariness. One day, as they sat in family therapy, Sarah spoke up. "I see the changes you're making, Jack. I appreciate the effort, but I'm still scared." Jack nodded, understanding. "I know, Sarah. I broke your trust, and I know it'll take time to rebuild it. I'm here for the long haul." Just as things seemed to be settling into a new normal, Lauren reappeared. She cornered Jack outside his office, her eyes wild. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "The guilt, it's eating me alive." Jack stepped back, wary. "What are you talking about, Lauren?" Lauren broke down. "I lied about everything. The pregnancy, the assault. I was so angry when you chose your family. I wanted to hurt you." Jack stood in shock as Lauren continued her confession. A mix of anger and relief washed over him. "You need to make this right," he said firmly. "Tell the truth to everyone." Lauren nodded, defeated. As she walked away, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The last piece of his old life was finally being put to rest. That evening, as Jack prepared dinner for the kids, he received a text from Sarah. "We need to talk, privately." Jack's heart raced. He'd been waiting for this conversation, hoping for it, and dreading it in equal measure. Whatever Sarah had to say, he knew it would shape the future of their family. As he replied, agreeing to meet, Jack took a deep breath. The road back had been long and difficult, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. His family was worth every step of this journey, no matter how challenging. Jack waited nervously at the restaurant, fidgeting with his napkin. When Sarah walked in, his heart skipped a beat. It was their first date since the separation. "Hi," Sarah said, sitting down. "Thanks for meeting me." They ordered drinks, an awkward silence falling between them. Finally, Jack spoke. "I'm glad we're doing this, Sarah. I've missed you." Sarah's expression softened, then hardened again. "Jack, I need to know. Are you really committed to this? To us?" Jack leaned forward. "Absolutely. You and the kids are everything to me." Their conversation flowed easier after that, reminiscing about happier times. But when Jack reached for Sarah's hand, she pulled away. "I can't," she said, tears in her eyes. "It's too soon." Jack's face fell. "I understand. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No, I'm sorry," Sarah interrupted. "I thought I was ready, but..." They left the restaurant, both emotional and confused. The road to reconciliation was proving longer than either had anticipated. At home, Emily burst into the living room, waving an envelope. "I got in," she exclaimed. "Stanford accepted me." The family celebrated, but Jack noticed Emily's smile fading. "What's wrong, honey?" he asked. Emily hesitated. "I'm not sure I should go. After everything that's happened, I don't want to leave you all." Sarah hugged her daughter. "Emily, this is your dream. We'll be okay." Jack nodded. "Your mom's right. We want you to follow your dreams." Emily looked between her parents, like torn between her ambitions and her loyalty to her healing family. Meanwhile, Ryan was making progress in therapy. One afternoon, he approached Jack tentatively. "Dad, I have a soccer game this weekend. Would you come watch?" Jack's heart swelled. "Of course, Ryan. I wouldn't miss it for the world." At the game, Jack cheered from the sidelines. When Ryan scored a goal, he looked to his father, grinning. It was a small moment, but it felt like a breakthrough. Just as things were looking up, Lauren reappeared. She cornered Jack outside his office, her eyes red from crying. "Jack, please," she begged. "I'm so sorry for everything. The lies, the lawsuit. I was desperate. Can you ever forgive me?" Jack stepped back, overwhelmed. "Lauren, I appreciate your apology, but I can't just forget what happened. You almost destroyed my family." Lauren nodded, wiping her tears. "I understand. I'll leave you alone. I needed you to know how sorry I am." As Lauren walked away, Jack felt a mix of pity and relief. He was finally free of the chaos she had brought into his life. That evening, Sarah asked to speak with Jack privately. Her face was serious as they sat down. "There's something I need to tell you," she began. Before everything happened with Lauren, I was tempted to have an affair." Jack's eyes widened in surprise. Sarah continued, "I didn't go through with it, but I was unhappy, Jack. I felt neglected, taken for granted. I'm not excusing what you did, but I want you to know that our marriage had problems before Lauren." Jack absorbed this information, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. "Thank you for telling me," he said finally. "I had no idea you were so unhappy. I'm sorry I didn't see it." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I just think if we're going to move forward, we need to be completely honest with each other." Jack agreed, reaching for Sarah's hand. This time, she didn't pull away. It was a small step, but an important one. As they talked into the night, Jack and Sarah began to see a path forward. It wouldn't be easy, but they were both committed to rebuilding their relationship. The next morning, as the family gathered for breakfast, Emily cleared her throat nervously. "Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you." Jack and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Emily's voice shook as she continued. I'm pregnant." The kitchen fell silent, the news hanging heavy in the air. Jack's mind raced, remembering Emily's previous pregnancy and abortion. Sarah reached for her daughter's hand, squeezing it supportively. "Oh, Emily," Sarah said softly. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm scared, but I think I want to keep it this time." Jack stood up, moving to embrace his daughter. "We're here for you, Emily. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." As the family rallied around Emily, Jack realized that their journey of healing was far from over. New challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt confident that they could face them together. The Cole family was rebuilding from the ashes, stronger and more united than ever before. Whatever the future held, they would face it as one. The Cole family sat around the kitchen table, tension palpable in the air. Emily's pregnancy announcement had caught everyone off guard, and now they faced difficult decisions. "Have you considered all your options, Emily?" Sarah asked gently. Emily nodded, her hand resting on her stomach. "I have. I want to keep the baby." Jack leaned forward. "We'll support you no matter what. If you want to have this baby, we're here for you." Sarah shot Jack a concerned look. "Jack, shouldn't we discuss this more? Emily's so young, and with college—" "It's Emily's decision," Jack insisted. "We need to respect that." Sarah's lips tightened, clearly disagreeing with Jack's approach. Emily looked between her parents, worry etched on her face. "I know it's not ideal," Emily said, "but I think I can do this, with your help." As the family continued to discuss the implications of Emily's decision, Ryan remained unusually quiet. The next day, he approached Jack after school. "Dad, I need your help," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "I found out who got Emily pregnant. He's a senior and he's telling everyone it's not his problem." Jack felt a surge of anger. "What do you want to do, Ryan?" "I want to confront him," Ryan replied. "Will you come with me?" Jack agreed, and they found the boy in the school parking lot. As Ryan started yelling, Jack put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Ryan, stop," Jack said firmly. He turned to the senior. "We're not here to fight. We're here to talk about responsibility." The conversation that followed was tense but productive. By the end, the boy agreed to meet with Emily and discuss his role in the baby's life. That evening, Sarah asked Jack to take a walk. As they strolled through their neighborhood, Sarah spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us, Jack, about our mistakes, our future." Jack's heart raced. "What are you thinking?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I see how much you've changed, how committed you are to the family. I think I'm ready to try again. Really try." Jack stopped walking, turning to face Sarah. "Are you sure? I don't want to rush you." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm sure. It won't be easy, but I want to rebuild our marriage." As they embraced, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They still had a long way to go, but this was a crucial step. Over the next few weeks, the family rallied around Emily. Jack accompanied her to doctor's appointments, while Sarah helped research childcare options that would allow Emily to still attend college. Emily, for her part, showed a newfound maturity. She threw herself into preparing for both college and motherhood, often seeking Jack's advice. "Dad," she said one evening, "I don't think I ever thanked you for standing by me through this. It means a lot." Jack hugged his daughter, his eyes misty. "Always, Emily. I'll always be here for you." Ryan, watching his family come together, finally found it in his heart to forgive his father. One night, as Jack tucked him in, a ritual they'd recently revived, Ryan spoke up. "Dad, I forgive you for everything." Jack's breath caught in his throat. "Ryan, I thank you. That means the world to me." As the months passed and Emily's due date approached, the Cole family grew stronger. However, Jack faced an unexpected challenge. His old company offered him a high-paying job in another state. Jack agonized over the decision. The job was a fantastic opportunity, but it would mean leaving Oakville, leaving the life he'd worked so hard to rebuild. On the day of Emily's high school graduation, Jack still hadn't made a decision. As they watched Emily receive her diploma, Jack felt a surge of pride. His family had been through so much, and here they were, celebrating this milestone together. After the ceremony, as they prepared to head home for a celebration, Sarah pulled Jack aside. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "Privately?" Jack nodded, his heart racing. What did Sarah want to discuss? Was it about the job offer? Had she changed her mind about their reconciliation? As they stepped away from the crowd, Jack braced himself for whatever Sarah was about to say. The future of their family hung in the balance, and he knew that whatever decision he made next would shape their lives forever. The high school auditorium buzzed with excitement as the graduation ceremony began. Jack and Sarah sat side by side, watching proudly as Emily, visibly pregnant, walked across the stage to receive her diploma. "Emily Cole," the principal announced, valedictorian. The crowd erupted in applause. Jack squeezed Sarah's hand, both of them beaming with pride. As Emily began her valedictorian speech, she paused, looking directly at her parents. "I wouldn't be here today without the love and support of my family," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger." Jack felt tears prick his eyes. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos, Ryan surprised everyone by asking to make a speech. "I just want to say," Ryan began, his voice shaky but determined, "thank you, Mom and Dad. This past year has been tough, but you've shown me what real love and forgiveness look like." Jack and Sarah exchanged a look of surprise and pride. Their son, once so angry and withdrawn, had grown into a thoughtful young man. As the family celebration wound down, Sarah pulled Jack aside. "Can we talk?" she asked, leading him to a quiet corner. Jack's heart raced, remembering the job offer he still hadn't decided on. "What is it, Sarah?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I think it's time for you to come home, Jack, for good." Jack stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm sure. We've both made mistakes, but I believe in us, in our family." Jack pulled Sarah into a tight embrace, overwhelmed with emotion. As they held each other, he knew his decision about the job offer was made. Later that evening, as the family sat together in their living room, Jack cleared his throat. "I have an announcement to make," he said. "I was offered a job in another state." Emily and Ryan looked alarmed, but before they could speak, Jack continued. "I've decided to turn it down. My place is here with all of you." The relief on his children's faces was palpable. Sarah reached for Jack's hand, smiling warmly. "There's something else," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm pregnant." The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in joyous exclamations. Emily hugged her mother, laughing through happy tears. Ryan high-fived his dad, grinning from ear to ear. As the excitement settled, Jack looked around at his family. "I know this is unexpected," he said, "but if you're all on board, I'd like us to try again, as a family." The response was unanimous. Emily, her hand on her own pregnant belly, smiled at her parents. "I think it's perfect," she said. "This baby will have the best grandparents and aunt and uncle." Ryan nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, and I'll be the cool uncle." As they laughed and talked late into the night, Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. He had come so close to losing everything, but here they were, stronger and more united than ever. The next morning, as Jack helped Sarah make breakfast, he reflected on their journey. "You know," he said softly, "I think my biggest punishment wasn't the public shame or losing my job. It was almost losing the unconditional love of my family." Sarah turned to him, her eyes soft. "But you didn't lose us, Jack. You fought to win us back, and you did." Jack nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I'll never take that for granted again." As Emily and Ryan joined them for breakfast, the conversation turned to the future. Emily discussed her plans for college and motherhood, while Ryan talked excitedly about his upcoming soccer season. Jack listened to his family, marveling at their resilience. They had weathered a storm that could have torn them apart, but instead, it had brought them closer together. As they finished breakfast and prepared to face the day, Jack knew that challenges still lay ahead. Emily's baby, their new baby, college, careers, life was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of that uncertainty. The Cole family had emerged from their trials stronger, more compassionate, and more united. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. As they left the house, Jack took one last look at his family: Sarah, Emily, Ryan, and the two new lives growing within. He smiled, filled with hope and love. This wasn't an ending, he realized. It was a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you think the Cole family's journey will continue. And if you want more emotional stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel for weekly updates. Remember, even in our darkest moments, love and forgiveness have the power to light the way forward.